guys, it's Dirty Dan here, and the last video I left off, I had hung the right side front fender, passenger side. Since finished that off, and I'm getting ready to mount the driver's side fender. I'm not going to show it because it's essentially the same job as I already showed you. So, but there is one significant difference, and it has to do with the inner fender. So I'm going to show you what that difference is and what needs to be done, but it's not going to hold up production or anything. I'm just going to go ahead and get the fender on. There's a spacer that's going to be required between the inner fender and the firewall. I was warned about this by a viewer back when I painted the inner fenders. It has to do with that funky emergency brake setup that was on this thing. There was a ton of hardware with that stuff, and I guess they had left room for the part of the mechanism, so I'm gonna have to fill that in with a spacer. I'll paint it to match the engine bay, but it's nothing I can't put in after. I mean, once the fender is bolted to the cab and to the inner fender, I can pull those bolts out going through the floor and the inner fender and slide my spacer in and bolt it out back up. So no big deal there. Yeah, and I had a few extra things to do on the driver's side, like 2 brake lines, which are in. And but what I really want to get to after I get all that together is sort out the wiring harness and figure out, which wires go to the front, which wires go to the back, which wires stay in the dash, that kind of thing. Bundle them up, group them all together so I know where I'm going with it. And then I've got to drill some holes and get some rubber grommets and start running the wiring and figuring out, where everything goes. So that's the plan today. So yeah, I'll go ahead quick and show you the issue with the inner fender. Okay, I got my holes sort of lined up here. Right now this is pulled out so I can slide my fender in underneath here. But these bolts down here are started, same with up here. And then this is the issue here. See the space there? There's about 2 inches there right now. Now I can suck that in a little bit, but not 2 inches. So I figure I'm going to make a spacer up, maybe, I don't know, 1.75 inches. Something that's going to be easy enough to slide in there. And then I can suck that panel in snug and seal it up. So really I only have to paint, the outside of it here. And we'll call it done. So it's just going to be like a channel or something. I haven't figured out exactly what I'm going to do with it yet, but yeah, 1.75 inches should be good. And yeah, that's it. So I can go ahead, like, this is fairly solid now, so I can go ahead and mount my fender to it and carry on. Here's the brake lines. I'm going to straighten out this a little bit, make it more like a matching pair, run them kind of parallel. I just didn't want to mess around with trying to get the fittings in down below at the proportioning valve, because I'm blind in one eye, can't see out the other, and if you don't have those fittings head nut straight, they just won't thread in. So it's a lot easier to do it with the inner fender out of the way, and that's what I did. So anyway, we're good to go there. And yeah, I'll come back after the fenders are all mounted and done and finished, and then we'll get on that wiring harness. Okay, so after a wicked battle, I finally did get this fender on. It fought me, man. Had a lot of trouble getting it in there, but it's on there now. All the bolts are in, or at least started. Any bolts that needed nuts and washers, they're started as well. So now it's just a matter of tightening everything up and minor adjustments. So both fenders are basically in. Just got to tweak them and tighten them down. So that's good. They're not coming off again. So there you have it. So now I'm going to turn my attention to the wiring, and I bought this wiring harness a couple months ago, I guess, and well, I don't know, 10 days, 2 weeks after I bought it, I was watching Dan over at DD Speed Shop, and he opened up. He had the exact same harness. He was opening up, same thing. So he didn't have a lot of good things to say about it. I guess there were a couple of mismarked or mislabeled wires, and stuff like that. So he wasn't impressed, but by the end of the video, he had pretty much everything working. So, I mean, how bad can it be, right? It either works or it doesn't. So he had the lights and the ignition and everything was working. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to run with it. So anyhow, I'll show you what I got going here, and kind of unbundled it and laid it out on a table of sorts, and I'll show you what we got. So it's over here, and we'll just tilt her down a little bit. There we go. So this is the unit here. It's the A team. So not the B team, the A team. Anyway, whatever. So here's your fuse panel. It's a 12 circuit, loaded with fuses, and even got a spare of each one of these fuses. It's got the relay, it's got the flasher. So, it's already separated. There's your main power and accessory, and then you've got all the stuff goes to the dash for your gauges and whatnot. And then here's the problem one here that's a little confusing. I mean, it's all pretty simple, but there's like there's 8 wires here, and 6 of them are marked accessory. So you kind of got to trace it back to the back of the fuse panel and see where it goes, or what it's supposed to be. And if you didn't have the wiring diagram that they provide here, you'd be pretty lost. You pretty much got to pick up the wire from the back of the fuse panel to figure out where it's going. So basically, this here will get me to all the switches and whatnot. I've got to run supply and run the wire to the actual lights and whatnot. So I'm gonna have to go upstairs, sort through my stuff. I've got a big box full of just wires. I'm probably gonna pull the whole box down and figure out what I have, and lay it out and go from there. So I'm not going to do too much with this right now. The first thing really it's finding a mounting spot for it, and then figuring out where I've got to drill a couple of holes, because I plugged all the holes in the firewall and whatever. So gonna have to drill a new one. I'm going to need grommets as well. So they give you the wiring diagram for the main fuse panel, basically. They also give you diagram for a couple of switches, brake switch and wiper switch and whatever. Turn signal circuit, hazard circuit, and then the dash. So everything's here. We're just sorting through it, figuring out what's what. Yeah, included with it a couple of Chevy headlight plugs. There's a few other bits and pieces. One roll of wire, I guess ground or something. Bunch of connectors, cheapos. The tiniest little zip ties I've ever seen. And some of this loom cheap old crap. So anyway, that's what we got. Like I said, I'm going to go upstairs and see what I can find for wire and start figuring this out. Alright, so I didn't find the box that I was looking for, but I did find this. So I've got a box here with 8 different spools of wire, all different colors, and this stuff here is good. The rest of this stuff is all kinds of oddball stuff, vacuum lines, plus some loom material and stuff like that. So I brought the whole box down. A lot of it will be stuff that I'm not going to be using. This wire here is just too stiff. It's not automotive stuff. So anyway, I think I've got enough to at least run all the back stuff and probably the headlights and stuff to the front. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna run the wires I need to get to the rear. Do that first because of the longest runs, and I'll tag them all. So I'm not using, a factory color code scheme. I'm using whatever I got. So I'm gonna have to label everything, um, so that when it's time to hook up to the switches, I know what's what. So yeah, I guess we'll just start, maybe chalk some lines out on the floor for length, and cut up a bunch of wire and get it on the truck. So there you go. Okay, so for my rear wiring, this is what I've been doing. Looping around the very rear most cross member, and then run the wire all the way, up past the cab, well past the cab, and cut it off, and then I group them all together like so, right? So I've got a bunch of wires here. Now I'm not quite finished yet, but I've got my brake lights, I've got backup lights, I've got my tail lights, I got the sending unit for the fuel gauge, and this is what I always do. I run a spare. Always run a spare wire. You never know. Something goes wrong. You've got that wire already run. You don't have to worry about fishing it through and dinking around with it. It's there. So you've got a spare all the time. So I like to do that. So I got a couple more wires to add to this, and then all the rear wiring is run to the back. Now remember that, you've got two tail lights, so they're going to share a wire. You've got both brake lights are coming on at the same time, so they're going to share a wire. And yeah, so also the license plate light is going to be shared with the tail light. So when you turn your lights on, your license plate light comes on. So it's pretty simple, really. Just plan ahead, make sure you leave yourself lots of slack, and put it all together like that. That'll be the rear. Then I can do the same kind of thing for the front, and we're moving right along. So there you go. All right, so I finished up the rear harness. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wires going to the rear. That's including my spare. And yeah, so I'm calling that section done. Now I've got to do the front. So the front is obviously headlights, signal lights, and horn. Yeah, and high beams. So all good. So I'm going to cut some wires and put the front one sort of together. And yeah, carry on. Fun, wow. Okay, after a couple of hours of pulling my wire, that's the rear. So from the very rear of the truck to the cab, where the fuse box is going to be, and this is the front. Got everything there. I also ran a spare for the front, so the yellow is spare front and back. Like I said, it's just something I like to do. It's always good to have a spare. So that's about as far as I can go with this today. I need a good step bit to drill some holes. I need grommets to be able to run the wire, and I'm gonna look into maybe something a little nicer for a wire cover, like a loom. But whatever. I guess what I'll do, I'm gonna head out first thing in the morning and pick up some stuff, and we'll get on it again tomorrow. But it's all good, and yeah, I got a lot of it done, so I'm pretty stoked. I also want to get some kind of brackets and stuff to fasten it to the frame and secure it. And neatness counts when it comes to wiring, honestly. Nothing worse than a bunch of wires all over the freaking place. It looks like hell. So try and keep your wires nice and neat and clean, and you'll be happy you did. It just does a nicer job, and people see that stuff. They notice it right away. Look under the hood or underneath the truck. It looks like somebody threw a can of spaghetti at it. So there you go, wiring, big chunk of it done. Okay, well, it's just before dark. It's nice and cool. Sun is down. I think it was a good time to get a coat of mud on here. For that, it's starting to stiffen up already. Anyway, we'll see if we can get another patch or two on there, and then call it a night and have a cold one. Okay, so there you go. A good chunk of the wiring organized and figured out. So that's a big deal. You know, once I have a pretty good idea of where I want to mount the fuse box, but once I actually get it mounted, then I'll know where I've got to drill my holes, put a couple of grommets in, run the wire through, and feed the wire to all the various locations that it needs to go to, and you know, you can be ready to start hooking stuff up. Won't be hooking it up right away. I'll just be ready to. So once the wires are run, that's the biggest part of the job, right? So anyway, that's good, and it's nothing to be afraid of, really. You kind of follow the wiring diagram and what makes sense. You know, you just take your time, and it'll come together. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Besides, you know, burning a project down in your house or your garage. No, but if you take your time, I mean, usually it's not a big deal. If you hook something up wrong, you probably blow a fuse or just burn a wire, generally, you know, or it just won't work. So no biggie. Yeah, I'm going to carry on also with, I'm doing body work on the truck box at the same time. So I just wanted to change it up a little bit, to show some wiring, something I haven't done on here before. And yeah, I'm confident that everything will be just fine. I've got to get a lot of stuff in here, man. I need parts. So you know, I need gauges. I need gonna have to sort through what I've got for lights and light pots and trim rings and all that kind of stuff. I think I have a good set of marker lights. I haven't figured out tail lights yet. License plate light. I could probably get a lot of that stuff from, you know, Amazon or whatever, generic hot rod stuff. So yeah, I got to put a list together and get a bunch of stuff ordered, and yeah, I'm just gonna keep on trucking, so to speak, and still got a long way to go, man, but it is coming together. So stay tuned, and soon we'll have this thing running and driving down the road, I hope. Anyway, not doing anything else, get out in the garage and build something, man. Later, guys.